Today on the Servant Leadership Podcast, we hear from Leanne Jamieson, the Executive Director at Prestonwood Pregnancy Center. Leanne is an inspiring leader who has grown Prestonwood to be one of the largest pregnancy centers in the United States. Her dedication to servant leadership shines through in her unwavering commitment to empowering women, cultivating a culture of compassion, and ensuring that everyone who comes through the center's doors feels valued and respected. Today, Leanne will share her valuable insights on servant leadership and how it can be effectively applied in nonprofits to drive meaningful change and create a lasting impact.
Leanne, thank you for being here. This is awesome. Give me a little bit about your journey, how you got here, how you're doing all this Prestonwood stuff, and what led to it.
Well, that is actually a bit probably more complex of a question you want an answer to, but I've been in ministry in different capacities for the last couple of decades, and really everything I've always ever done has really culminated in this role that I now have as Executive Director at the Pregnancy Center, and just really maybe out of obedience to what I believe is the call of my life. That's how I've ended up here, and love what I get to do. Wow.
So what were some of those stepping stones that got you here?
Yeah.
We've got time.
Okay, yeah, time? Okay, all right then. Well, about 10 years ago, my husband and I had made a move to Dallas, Texas. And I had been on staff at a large church in Houston. At that point, I was working in HR doing leadership and development. And we ended up at a church, which unbeknownst to my husband and I, they had been praying, Lord, even if you have to move her, we need a new women's ministry director. And we showed up there, met the lead pastor, and I remember him looking at my husband and I and asking where we come from. And then he looked directly at me and said, because he asked what church we had been at in Houston. And I told him, and he had asked, were you very involved at that church? And I remember thinking, how much do I share? And just saying, well, actually, I was on staff. And he didn't react. I didn't know that they were looking for a women's ministry director at that point, and had been for 6 months. I just, he moved on. And then through a series of meetings and lunches, and in fact, one lunch, I remember going to out with him and another woman on staff, and I thought it was because they'd heard that I spoke. I was a women's speaker at that time as well, and I had thought maybe that's what they had heard about me. And so we'd gone out for this lunch, and I remember leaving, calling my husband and saying, that was the strangest lunch I've ever had. And he said, why? And I said, it felt like a job interview. And so they were trying to figure out who I was. And then, that next phone call was, would you consider coming on staff? And at that point, I really felt like I was where I was supposed to be in this role I had. And I was doing leadership and development of executives and future leaders of this large company. And I was loving it, and it was challenging. But right after they'd asked me to come on staff, I walked into the office one morning. It was really early. I had flown into Houston. That's where the head office was. And my boss was waiting for me. And she was not an early person. I was. She wasn't. And so that was unusual. And she asked me to come into her office and talk to her. And she was so excited because she was like, we are changing your job. This is going to be an awesome opportunity. You're going to implement this new learning management system all over North and South America. You're going to get to travel, and you're going to get to go to Europe. And it was just like, she thought she was giving me the greatest thing that she could give her staff member. And I remember just thinking, oh my gosh, like systems implementation was not, I'm a people person. Like, I don't know if you've gotten that already, but people, not necessarily systems. And sitting behind a computer and trying to train other people on this whole, and the whole implementation and all that. It was just, and traveling not for vacation was just like, I just couldn't. And so I felt like, okay, maybe I need to pursue this other opportunity. So went on staff, and within a year, the Pregnancy Center, which was an integrated auxiliary ministry of Prestonwood Baptist Church, where I went on staff, their director passed away. And so they had asked me to consider coming into this role. And so I did, again, really, like I said, out of obedience. and discovered everything I've ever done, everything I've ever learned and experienced in both my personal and work life, really God is using to come into play at this very moment, and using those gifts and those skills to get to do what I think is an incredible role. I get to help people in crisis and share truth with love and grace, and it's the best.
So when you were in the process of starting that journey to come on board, what was the vision for you? What captivated your heart, and where did you think it was going to go?
Certainly not where we have been in the last 8 years. It has been an incredible ride. I think at the time, initially, because the previous leader of the organization had passed away suddenly, there wasn't really a lot of transition that you might expect for a leader of like from one leadership point to another. You expect that there's going to be some transition and preparation. But in this particular case, there wasn't. And so, those early days of my starting, I tell people all the time, it was like someone gave me a box of puzzle pieces, but I was missing the big picture. And so I would just take out a puzzle piece and look at it and be like, well, I have building insurance. What do we do? And start to learn and discover. And, I just immersed myself in the ministry. And I mean, it didn't matter if it was front desk or being a client advocate or sitting with the donor development. I did it all. There wasn't a role except medical, for lots of reasons, that I did not experience or put my foot into to try to understand the ministry. So I started from the ground up, at the same time trying to work through this lack of transition. And in that, I believe I just got this kind of clear vision where we needed to go. I had not been in this area of ministry before, so I had come with no preconceived notions, and just really saw things that I just didn't understand from my past experience. So I think my role as women's ministry director or leadership development or all marketing in the past, all of that came into play, and I would just ask questions and start to sort of question why we were doing and where did we want to go. What was the why behind the ministry? Yeah. And trying to figure out, okay, what if we understand what the why is and the whole team understands what the why is, what is it that we need to do to accomplish that why?
So from a function standpoint, what does the day-to-day look like for Prestonwood? What's the process of how people come into Prestonwood Pregnancy Center? What's the process for how they're served throughout it? Give the audience a little bit of that background.
That's a great question. Well, I mean, obviously the majority of the people that are seeking our services are in crisis. And so the first thing they're going to do is often reach out to us through phone, chat, text. They've often found us through an internet search, and they just know that they are in what is seemingly to them a hopeless situation, and they just want to find some hope, some options, some clear answers to where they find themselves. So they'll reach out to us. We bring them in. We don't believe in having anyone wait who's in crisis, so they're going to immediately be able to either walk in or make an appointment to come to one of our centers. They're going to have a pregnancy test. We're going to confirm that they're pregnant. And they're going to get some really solid guidance. I think there's a lot of misinformation about what pregnancy centers do in this nation right now. I think there's a lot of thought that we are not truthful or that we're not being upfront, but I can speak to Prestonwood Pregnancy Center, that's not the case. They're going to get truth. We really believe that, given truth and given resources and just compassion, that woman is going to make the healthiest and best choice and decision for herself. I would also say that when she walks through our center doors, I think there's also a misconception out there that pregnancy centers are just concerned about her unborn child. And I will tell you that she's our first appointment. that when she walks into our center, we are as concerned and care so much about her. We want to know, what were her hopes, her dreams, what are her struggles, what brought her into our center today, what makes her feel, what's her situation that makes her feel like abortion is her best and only option. Yeah, I have talked with people from lots of different backgrounds, and I try to explain to them, when you sit with a woman who is contemplating abortion, you ask her, what are the reasons that you are seeking an abortion at this point? She often will hear, across the board, almost all the time we hear finances. We'll hear relationship issues. We'll hear about certain life circumstances. And the interesting thing is that abortion doesn't take that off the table. All of those are still in her life, whether she has an abortion or not. And so if we love and care for her, we need to address those and help her work through them, because they're struggles in her life. We care about her. And so I think, we're going to work with her on those issues. We're going to want to seek out and find out what's going on in her life and help her through that. And then if she is pregnant, she's going to have a same-day sonogram. She might have some blood work done depending on her circumstances. She might have STD testing and treatment depending, again, on her circumstances. But she's going to have an opportunity to go into that sonogram room with a trained nurse, and that nurse is going to help her walk through her options from a medical standpoint. And then we're going to continue to keep in touch with her. We're going to continue to reach out to her as she works through what is the decision that she wants to make about that pregnancy. We're going to also provide needed resources. So if she needs food, if she needs housing, if she needs clothing for existing children, or she's parenting that child and she needs it for that future child, she needs cribs, diapers, wipes, formula, you name it. We have a family resource center that she can access. We have classes and ongoing support. We have licensed professional counselors on staff. We really are there to meet her needs holistically. I would say through how we love on our client, I know that 86% of our clients choose to go through with that pregnancy, and either parent or a very small percentage would place for adoption. But regardless, when she leaves our center, she knows that she's loved and that we are there for her. It's our belief that abortion is not the best option for her. But we also believe that God is the heart changer, not man.
Right. So you'll walk through the whole pregnancy process with these women.
Yes.
And even after the pregnancy, after birth, if they've chosen to continue through having the baby, you'll walk with them after through the resource center and other stuff.
Yeah, yes.
Tell us more about the after side of things.
I think, let me just tell you, just recently we have a client who has walked through some really hard stuff. And she's walked through a pregnancy before with us, and she came back when she found herself in another pregnancy. And it's fascinating because, I've had parts to do with her story, but, not to the same degree as even some of the other staff. And when she shows up, one of the front desk staff will come get me and tell me that she's here. And, just to get to hug on her and love her and hug her neck. And, recently she just gave birth to her second child, and I got invited to be at the hospital, which was fun. But I was sitting with her, and I just remember thinking, this is so fascinating. Because in my world, in my life experience, it feels like I'm just a bit player in her life. In her world, the love and acceptance she has found at the pregnancy center has been life-changing for her. Yeah. And she sees us as family. And I like that. Listen, there's nothing like getting to sit with someone and they are trusting you with some of the darkest and hardest periods of their life, and that you just get a glimpse to watch God work in their life, and to just be able to be on the sidelines cheering her on, and to have her want to come back and just spend time with us because of her experience, like that's rewarding. That's a good day at the office.
Yeah. So out of your whole team, some people are getting those life-changing experiences where they're actually interacting with people. Other people are probably behind the scenes doing stuff, and they'll never, I would assume, never maybe even talk to some of the women that are being helped. How are people motivated to be involved in this space? Because it's a controversial space. What draws people into wanting to work in this space?
I think there's not a staff person that doesn't walk through our door, or a potential staff person that doesn't walk through our doors, who doesn't just want to see and make a difference, especially in the lives of women and families in our country. They come because they maybe have experienced abortion in their own life, or they know someone who's experienced abortion, or they were adopted, or they just love God's people and want to make a difference. I would say your question as to how do you be motivated in a controversial area such as the pregnancy center. I really think let me step to that idea that we're controversial, because we have become controversial. It's fascinating. A lot of the controversy is not based in truth. That's frustrating when you're a leader to see this sort of swirling of untruth around what you do or how you operate out there, because we do have true medical people that care about the women and men that find themselves in our center, doctors and nurses, registered diagnostic medical sonographers, medical assistants. They're all very much called to be here. So how do we motivate? I think, for me, I go back to that question, why, and why we're doing what we do. And the truth is, I am about a woman knowing that she has another option. And that there is no quick fix to our struggles. I've had young women sit with me and say, I just didn't want my life to change. And, my counsel to her is often, okay, but the moment you had a positive pregnancy test, your life changed.
Right.
Let's now navigate what that looks like. Because there's no way to step back in time and redo this. So this is the truth that we find ourselves in. And let's look at your options. Let's look at the pros and the cons to each of those options. And let's talk about your struggles, your dreams, your needs. And let's figure out, let's make a plan. And it's interesting how often a lot of the young people that come to us just haven't just stopped and just taken a breath. Like, just take a breath before you rush into any decision, because the truth is, when we rush into a decision, we call that reacting. And in my experience, as I'm getting to be an older woman, none of my great decisions have been made through reaction, but often through response. And that response, sometimes it's just a breath. It's just a moment. It's just someone saying, have you thought about the possibility? Or have you thought about empowering them? That if you have even an inkling that you are to have this child, you can do this. And by the way, we're here to help you do this. And, I think that for so many of our clients, it's all they needed.
I know you probably can't get into specifics of individual people, but who are the types of women you're helping? Is there an average life, in terms of who you help, or is it all kinds of walks of life, or what does that look like?
Yeah. I get asked that question a lot, Chris, like, what does a typical client look like? And I always say there's no typical client, because they each come with different life experience, different backgrounds, different support systems, lack of support systems. But if we were to talk statistically, the average age of a client is between 19 and 26. She's often single, although we serve married couples as well. Like I said, there's not a background and demographic situation that we don't serve. But the average is probably a single woman, college age, that has a life plan in her mind, and this pregnancy was not a part of it. So yeah, all different types.
So you're in the process of leading arguably one of the most successful centers in the country. There is a ton of crisis. Both you talked about crisis from the women's standpoint who desperately need your services, but also there's crisis just across the country with what we talked about was maybe has become controversial. How do you deal with crisis more at the organizational level and the national level? How do you deal with navigating sticky waters from what you can share?
Well, I mean, obviously, my personal faith and just, prayer and trust and just that moment every morning before I come to work of just, praying for the people that work alongside me or serve with us or support us and our clients. I think whether you're a person of faith or not, just having that moment of reflection and anticipation is really important. Quiet, margin. I always say the best leadership happens when we have margin in our lives, to just reflect and be able to think about, the days prior and the day ahead and the weeks and months ahead. All of that happens when there's some breathing room for yourself. Leading in chaotic times. I think I could write a book on it based on this last year. I would say there's been a lot of distraction. And I think as a leader, when there's a lot of chaos and distraction around, you have to really first, as a leader, keep your focus on the calling of the organization that you're leading. Why are you there? Why do you exist? What is it that is your purpose and your mission? And the noise around you, sometimes it doesn't matter. It purely is to distract you from that core mission of that organization. And that's often where I think when I see a lot of leaders struggle, it's when they've started to put an ear and a focus on that which they shouldn't. It's not that you don't listen to your critics. I think that you can learn from critics, whether that criticism based in truth or not. I think reflection as a leader, teachability is the key to being successful as well. So, being able to also take that quiet time and reflect on what the critics are saying and doing a self-check, it's really going to keep you on the right road for sure. But I think, your staff, when chaos is hitting, whether a leader realizes it or not, they are looking. I often will say, in a lot of ways, set the temperature in the office. And, there is with every leader, the obligation of influence. Yeah. And, if I can't be healthy and right, I have no business doing that to my staff. I steward them and their calling at the center. I'm responsible to see them grow and to be in a healthy spot. But that has to start inward first.
Right. On the servant leadership side, like you're talking about leading an organization, when you think of servant leadership and your role and how you interact with your team, how do you see servant leadership playing out with you and the team and different people on your team?
When I think about servant leadership, I think about people who have gone before me. I was very blessed in my career to have. I think about one of my first bosses, and I remember she had a really leadership, impactful position at the church we were serving at, and she knew everybody. She knew the little older woman that her job was to just clean the pews in the church. Like she came in and she would polish and clean, and she would stop. She knew their lives, their stories. She connected, she saw them. And I remember thinking, like, she had such a heart. And it wasn't a position of like, I am in authority and you are not. It really was in my place of authority. My job is to make sure that you know you've been seen. And that impacted me very early on. And so I think, servant leadership is knowing that people feel seen. That doesn't mean that I necessarily know the ins and out of everything they're working on or what they're contributing at the very moment. It's hard. We're now an organization of about 46 staff. I don't know what everyone is working on at every moment.
Right.
I would love to, but I hope they feel seen. And I also, they know when my door is open, that my door is truly open, that there is not a person that cannot walk in and plop themselves in that chair and tell me about what's going on in their life. So for me, servant leadership is that my staff know I have their back and that they're seen, and that hopefully I'm their biggest champion and the believer in their calling here, and that they can have tough, honest moments with me when they're struggling and know that I'm going to tell them the truth. I'm going to do it with love and grace, but I'm going to try to set them back on that right course when they need it.
On the servant leadership side of things, as you think through all the various leadership aspects that you see in day to day from people on your team, from your team, you bump into a lot of key leaders all around. What are some of the leadership traits that you think are really important that you think other people should be aware of when it comes to growing their leadership skills?
That's a really good question. When I think about leaders that I have admired, inspiring, I think leaders who can communicate the direction clearly that they believe the organization is to go. One time I was thinking about what is the difference between a leader and a manager? Because we use those. Sometimes we use it interchangeably. Like there's leaders or managers of people, but I was like, is there a difference? And I thought, okay, a good leader should be trying to catch up with their people. Like once they've cast that vision, the team is going so hard after that vision that leader looks up and thinks like, what? And they're doing it better than that leader could even have hoped or dreamed for. A manager is hauling the people that they're supposed to be, managing and directing along with them. So the idea of a leader being behind, encouraging and empowering, and the manager being in front, kind of pulling along. And so, I think about the people I've admired, they've been really able to just inspire, set vision, encourage, and allow people to just go for it. I'll say to my staff, because you get the odd person, and I can speak to this because I call myself a recovering perfectionist. I slip back into it really easily, but we sometimes those type A driven perfectionist personalities are terrified of failing. It's hard to be innovative and not fail every once in a while. And one of the values we have at Prestonwood Pregnancy is innovation. And I'll say to them, I don't fear failure. I don't want you to feel failure. Failure is an okay thing if you're growing and you're innovating and you're stepping out and you're, trusting the vision and you're going for it. Failure is different than repetitive mistakes.
Right.
Like we'll deal with repetitive mistakes, but failure we're just going to learn from. We're going to chalk that up as a win at Prestonwood because we tried something new. It didn't work out, but at least we tried something new.
Right. Wow. When people look at this from the outside, they're probably looking at your industry and thinking, this is one of the craziest industries out of all the industries, because you kind of you have a mix between healthcare, counseling, social services, just general, like almost retail, where you're helping provide products for people who need them. I mean, you span so many areas.
Lactation consulting, yes.
So many.
Car seats. Yeah.
What is something that you think people from the outside might misconceive about this industry that would be useful to hear your opinion on? Or is there anything?
I guess what I would love for people to understand, whether they consider themselves pro-life or pro-choice. The misconception is that a pregnancy center, that we have one agenda, and that is to stop abortion. I would love to see there no longer be abortion in our nation. Flat out would like to see abortion end. But that's not my sole motivation. I see around us people struggling every day. Never saw it more than when the pandemic hit and people were reaching out to us because they were in a job that was paying hourly and they were having to decide between buying food or buying diapers. And they reached out to us and we were able to answer both of those needs. I think if people could understand that we're part of the solution, we're not part of the problem, that we believe that those that come to us are intelligent and capable of making their own decision, and that we are here to provide the information that they need, the resources that they might lack, the hope that they require, that's what we're there for. I think it's been interesting because over the last year when we've had, maybe the odd protester outside our center, I've driven in and I've thought, I wonder if you could come in and you saw what we were doing and you didn't know what we were. You didn't have a label put on us, but you found yourself in, just as a fly on the wall, watching a client go from the front to finding out if they're pregnant, to the resources and the help we offered, the licensed professional counselors that they have access to, the social workers, the myriad of we're just here to also help connect you to navigate the situation you're in. I just wonder if you took the label away and you put that person out there, if they wouldn't look around and say, man, this is incredible. These people are doing some really incredible work. I wish that we weren't politicized, and that what we could be seen is the resource that we are to the community. There are not a lot of agencies out there that we do not take a dime. We do not take money from the government. We do not take money from our clients. We are supported by donors that want to make a difference, and that we are just purely here. We're just giving it away. And there's not a lot of places that you can go that will say, okay, what is it that you need? Let's work on this. Let's equip you to do whatever you hope or dream to do. Let's take this one step at a time. Let's figure it out. Like you said, it's social services, it's medical, it's resource management, it's connecting to other ministries and nonprofits out there so that we can address the issues that are in our backyards. They're my neighbors, they're your neighbors, they're your kids' families that they're going to school with. Someone has to be there with an open door policy saying, come on in, let's figure out this situation that you're in and navigate it. I think that if the majority who are criticizing what pregnancy centers do could just walk in one day and actually see what's taking place. There's bad actors on both sides of this equation.
For sure.
But those of us called to the Prestonwood Pregnancy Center, this is not a political issue for us. We just care. We care about the people. And we care about their struggles. And it breaks our heart. And we just want to make a difference. That's why all of us came in. It's why my staff, even if they're behind the scenes and they're answering the phone or they're helping with donor development, their why for every day is they know, even though they're not directly with that client, they're making a difference.
So there's going to be tens of thousands of people that listen to this and might be moved by just never having heard about this topic from this lens. How do people get involved in making a difference in women's lives, regardless of how they feel about where this lands politically?
Yeah.
What do you recommend?
I mean, in the United States of America, we're the land of the free. Like, yeah, I'm a fairly new American, moved here in 2001. And, what I love about America is that there is a sense that we care for our neighbor. And so I would say, don't let people become part of the landscape of your life. See them, care about them, care about the needs, care about the young people in your kids' lives, and find out what's going on. And I think somewhat stop the judgment and the noise and just understand that we're in a time in our culture where things are hard. Families are struggling. I guess, I get to see that. You have to be careful when you work in an area where you're always dealing with trauma or crisis. It's easy to start to put that lens on and believe that, everyone is in trauma or crisis. But from what we see a lot of struggle in the American family. I think it's going to be a tough year financially. And I think now is the time for us to get back to some of those old school values of caring for your neighbor and stop the divide at this point.
I really appreciate that. That's awesome. One thing before we totally wrap up.
Okay.
This has become tradition. I've got 10 rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Just first thing that comes to your mind when I ask each of these. Who's the first person you think of when I say servant leadership?
My son.
Love it. 5 words that most describe yourself.
Tenacious, driven, soft-hearted. Is that
that counts as one?
Okay.
That can be one.
I think people would say winsome.
Okay.
And my husband would say stubborn.
I love that.
I'm okay with that.
Favorite author or book?
Oh gosh, I love to read. So this is a hard one because I think sometimes it's whatever's new and on the bestseller list too. I love leadership books. Love John Maxwell.
Love it.
And his leadership books. So
you can go with John Maxwell. He's a good author.
Good. John Maxwell.
That's great.
Reach on out. I've got a book for you to sign.
Favorite movie?
That's another good one. Oh gosh. I mean, I love anything that gets the heart. So I don't know. I'm also a big Star Wars fan. Is that surprising?
Okay. I mean, based on what you just said, that's surprising.
I know, but actually, I felt like I need to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a Star Wars fan.
That's great.
Okay.
The new ones, the old ones,
I like them all, but, because when I was, I think it was junior high when the first one came out. So, I mean, there had been nothing like it in the movies when that first Star Wars came out. So,
love it. Favorite food?
I mean, I'm in Texas, Mexican.
Great. Favorite thing to do in your free time?
I'm a new grandma, so I've picked back up sewing for my grandchild, so sewing.
Love it. Surprising fact about you?
Let's see. Surprising fact. I guess that I was born and raised in Canada, but I became an American on January 13th, 2015. I don't know if that's surprising,
Yeah,
but
that's
I try to
surprising.
talk like a Texan, y'all. So I feel like if I,
I don't think people would have known that you were born in Canada.
no way.
Okay, maybe now. Yeah, you can turn it on like that. No.
I had to.
Favorite place you've been?
Italy. Oh my gosh, I love Italy.
Favorite place, or where would you want to go if you could go
Israel.
anywhere? Israel.
Yeah, you notice how fast that was? That's
Yeah.
on my bucket list. Israel.
Okay, and last question is best advice you've ever gotten?
Oh gosh, I've had a lot of advice. I think when I was being asked to step into my first leadership role, the person before me said to me that, Leanne, everybody has capacity. And I'm fairly high capacity, high energy. I don't sit still real well without having two other things on the go at the same time. And she said, if when you lead, you have to understand that everybody has a different levels of capacity, and you've got to be okay with people that have a different capacity than you do. And I think that's been really helpful to know that, there are people that are not built like just that. I guess the lesson is not everyone should look like the person beside them. Like that, it takes all of us. That's, that looks, an organization is stronger with different types of people in it than when there's a whole bunch of the same. So to be okay with that.
That's good advice. That's really good advice. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for being on the podcast. We super appreciate you.
Thanks for having. I appreciate you, Chris.
I know people will love listening to this.
I hope so.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Servant Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to never miss an update. Be sure to check out the servantleadershippodcast.org for more updates and additional bonus content.